Good evening and welcome to the first NYSSRA Coalition for Save the Endangered Species. Yes, you're in the right place. And due to no more real ruts and the grooming of corduroy and other aspects of trails being closed because they have to be groomed, we really have to start thinking about snow snakes. It's a problem. All kidding aside, we're here tonight with NYSSRA for the movement analysis kickoff series. I want to thank everybody for being on, and people are coming on as we speak. So we're going to give it a minute or two, and we'll get into the meat of the subject at that point. Hope everybody's enjoying fall and that it has been productive in dry land or indoor skiing or whatever you're doing. Just finishing up a little project out in Niagara this weekend with kids. It was really a lot of fun getting kids to think about skiing and movement. So here we are. We're going to kick off the 25-26 season. I'm just letting some people in and we'll get started in 1 minute. So be patient with me and we'll get through the rest of the housekeeping that we have to do. So as far as housekeeping, everybody should be muted. And if you're not presenting, I would appreciate it if your video is off because the bandwidth in my NYSSRA mothership is really amazing, but sometimes it tends to flicker a little bit. So that would be great. Tonight we have our first of the next 4 Mondays with movement analysis. This originally was thought about and brought to the attention of the Coaches Education Committee in NYSSRA by Kathy Okoniski and I believe Jeff Walker from Hollymont. And our current chair of the Coaches Education Committee, John Morgan, who's the head coach, I believe, at Gore Mountain, is our chair now and has done a great job at really, putting together a solid program for the next few weeks that I think you'll find beneficial as well as educational. And even if you think you know things, any coaches education or interaction I have with coaches of the caliber that we have always knocks the dust off my shelves and reminds me I forgot about things. So right now I'm going to introduce you to John Morgan, the chair of our Coaches Education Committee with NYSSRA. And he's going to talk a little bit about the series that we have coming up and what you can expect. And looking forward to a great month of education. John, I'll turn it over to you. I'll pull up your agenda.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your evening to go through some movement analysis with us here at NYSSRA. So this is our third year of having an MA series, and this year what we've decided to do was to go by age groups from the U10s up to the U16s each week. So next week will be U10 movement analysis. Following week, the U12s, following by the U14s and the U16s. The way that it will be working is there will be a videos available to everybody to see prior to the Monday evening meeting. Hopefully by Wednesday of the previous week, the videos will be available on NYSSRA.org, NYSSRA.net for review and study. And then on the evening for the meeting, there'll be a panel of anywhere from 3 to 5 coaches and discuss the video, discuss the areas of opportunity and what drills and what progression could be used to address the issue that's been identified. It's kind of a broad brush, and we hopeful that the program runs from one to the other very seamlessly, and we'll see how that goes. But we have national faculty members, ex-Olympic medalists and coaches that'll be on the panels. So it should be pretty exciting, starting next Monday with the U10 panel. So hopefully everybody can make it. The other part that I just need to make sure I cover is that all these MA meetings, including tonight through the 27th of November, are available for CEU credits through the sport education department. Everybody will need to self-report. And I know Aaron has the instructions at the end of the presentation tonight. It is on the announcement today that went out on NYSSRA, how to self-report. But you'll be able to self-report for 2 credits for each one of these that you attend. NYSSRA will not be doing that for you. You have to do it yourself. If you haven't joined the sport ed yet, and I'm sure you will, you can go back and still report this. So maybe jot down the date, the time, and all that fun stuff. But without any other things to say, I'd like to introduce Aaron Dewey. Aaron Dewey was past president of NYSSRA here in New York. Aaron Dewey is a level 3 PSIA, a level 300 US ski and snowboard, level 400 US ski and snowboard coach. He's on the national faculty, and we have a great presentation for you.
Thanks, John.
Hey, one thing I just want to add, and I'll let you go, Aaron. You guys don't need to put your name and number in the chat. You are responsible for self-reporting. This event will go to NYSSRA. Aaron will present it to them, and when you self-report, you will get credit for. And Aaron will go over the credit end of it. I won't go into it right now. Thanks. Sorry, Aaron.
No worries. As a matter of fact, that's my first slide here. So if I can just share my screen here.
One answer left. Give me a physical sport, you'd be shocked that they play at nursing home. Wrestling, Steve.
Hey guys, please mute yourself and take yourself off video, please. Thank you.
All right, we'll get going here. Thanks for tuning in. This is I think our 3rd year of doing this. We get some pretty good response, pretty good attendance at this sort of thing. This is just reiterating what John and Mergs were talking about. There's no need to put your Easter number in the chat. We're not taking attendance. This is totally up to you to self-report. In order to do that, you sign into your account with the US Ski and Snowboard. Go to Coaches Education, scroll down to the big tab that says About Coaches Education. Then you scroll down to Information for Coaches, and then you scroll down to How to Complete a Self-Report, and there's full instructions there, along with a link to the form that you have to fill out and send in to them. And as John said, each one of these is worth 2 credits. Any questions on that? We'll take questions in the chat, right, Steve? Is that what we're doing?
Correct, Aaron. I'm monitoring the chat right now. I don't see any questions, but yeah, you don't need to put your name and number in there. Just pay attention to the new protocol.
All right, so we'll start off with just kind of defining what we're doing here. So my idea here today, I'm not going to be doing any MA on any athletes. I'm not going to be, looking at videos of any particular athletes. What I'm going to do is lay down the framework for the next 4 weeks of what the methods, what are some of the methods and some of the procedures that we have to perform to perform good movement analysis at all age levels and really in all kinds of different sports. So let's talk about what the elements of movement analysis are first. So one thing that in working with national faculty and doing assessments for the last 30 or 40 years, one thing that gets confused all the time is coaches and athletes confusing position with movement. So movement analysis is just that. Skiing is movement. It's movement analysis, not position analysis. So a lot of coaches that that have worked with athletes for a number of years have started changing their phraseology so that the phrasing is less about teaching a position and more about teaching a movement. When we're describing a correction to an athlete, we need to describe a movement, not a static position. We do refer to static drills all the time, and I like to think of static drills as those drills that we perform at the top of a little slope or something where we're standing still, or we're on the, we're standing sideways to the slope. The skis aren't sliding, and we're talking about moving into and out of different positions, but we're talking about moving. So the demonstration should also include that movement, even though you're not sliding down the hill. Describe what we see as more of a movie, a video. Practice describing these movements as if you're describing a scene from a movie, not a still photograph. So here's a pretty decent skier, actually 3 pretty decent skiers. But movement analysis is going to involve what we see, hear, and what the athlete feels. That's the starting point, okay? What we're looking at, also what we hear and what the athletes feel. If we can get that out of them, if we can find some way to have them communicate to communicate to us, that is valuable feedback. But it also includes what we decide to do about what we see here in the athlete fields. And then the final step in the movement analysis is putting a plan together. Like, how are we going to do what we think has to be changed or improved upon? So there's a whole bunch of essentials that are important to kind of have in our backpack before we even start looking at an athlete. So, we haven't looked at any video yet. We haven't met with the athletes for the first time this season yet. There's a bunch of prepping, and as Steve says, I love his expression. He says that every year he's dusting his shelves off every fall, those essentials are some of the things we need to start looking at this time of the year, so we can be at top form when we start looking at athletes. 4 pillars of optimizing performance. Okay, or being fast, eliminating drag. That's drag in the snow, drag in the air, any kind of drag. Center of mass takes the shortest path. That's another thing that's one of the 4 elements. Pressure concentrated in the fall line. So when the ski approaches the fall line, that's when the ski is bent the most. Shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Okay. 4 pillars of movement analysis. What is the ideal movement for the task? So before we can start working on an athlete and improving their skiing, we have to know what the ideal movement is. We've got to have a whole library of videos in our head, a bunch of biomechanical understanding to know what the ideal movement for the task is, and also what the ideal movement is for that part of the turn, for instance, if we're only looking at one part of the turn. Second is what movement you see, and that's, we like to refer to those as the ideal movement and then the real movement. Like, what is this athlete doing and how does it differ from the ideal? You have to make sure that you are looking at an athlete and understanding that, we're going to look at athletes for the next 4 weeks. You're going to see like 12 things wrong with each athlete, right? Some of those are cause, some of them are effect. So you really want to attack the cause of what's making the ski not doing what it has to do, rather than an effect that is actually being caused by something else. A good example of this that I always use is the hands not, hands in the pockets sort of thing. You see an athlete, their hands are down, their hands aren't up, their hands aren't ready. And many times the coach will go directly to addressing that and saying, well, you got to keep your hands up. And, they'll start holding ski poles. They'll do all kinds of things to get their hands up. But when you really look at the athlete closely, their ankles aren't bent. They're on the backs of their boots. And so 99 times out of 100, if you can get them to bend their ankles, their hands will start responding to good balance. That's a good example of confusing cause and effect. The next step, and this is the most difficult thing for many coaches. We've done, John and I have done a bunch of these, and I'm sure he'll agree with me. We've done a bunch of assessments for 100 and 200, and this is the most difficult thing for coaches to do, is to put a progressive plan together, a simple progressive plan together. So we might focus a little bit more on that as we go on through the night here. The other thing we added this year is some alpine racing core concepts and movements. These are essential concepts to have in the mind when you're looking at an athlete. Upper body with a downhill bias. Okay, the upper body is always biased down the hill, not totally not totally facing down the hill is what we used to say, but it has a downhill bias. Equal ankle flexion. Both ankles flexing equally. The inside ankle flexes as much as the outside.
This for skis or for coaches?
Turn inclination. We'll take a look at some pictures of these. Angulation. You know, everything you do with your knees, your hips, your ankles, your spine to create angles that will create edge angle on the snow. Long leg, short leg. Long leg, short leg. Sorry about that. Long leg, short leg. You know, in the turn, one leg is extended while the inside leg is flexed, making them appear at different lengths. Balance over the outside ski, predominantly. Pressure in the fall line. That's where the ski is bent the most, when it hits the fall line. Edge angle. And then, of course, for developing athletes, pole usage is essential. So, you know, we've talked a lot about this, but we should take a look, kind of associate each one of these, you know, with a picture, so we're all on the same page here. So starting with upper body downhill bias, you can see here, the skis are moving in one direction. They move underneath the upper body, and the upper body is already heading in the other direction. I think that's pretty clear. So there's always a downhill bias for that upper body. Equal ankle flexion. So if you take a look at both of these ankles and look at the little gap in the back of the boot there on the extended leg, same gap is appearing at the flexed leg. So both ankles are flexed, both skis are working. Turn connection. So putting two turns together. The skis are skiing a longer line than the center of mass. In the center of mass, the skis are pretty much running along you know, a planar surface, and the center of mass is in a three-dimensional surface, up and down and all around, right? But taking a shorter line than the skis and the feet. Inclination. So here's an athlete at the top of a turn. All right, not a whole lot of angulation with the knees, hips, and ankles, but he's flattening the ski, starting to get the ski on edge by inclining down the hill. Some people call it leaning. I like to use the term inclination. Leaning sometimes can denote some problems. Inclination here at this point in the turn is appropriate. There are points in the turn where inclining or leaning in obviously is not optimal. You know, from that impulse point down, inclination is can be problematic. Angulation, so knees, hips, spine, things are angled so that you can get your edges on the snow instead of their flats. Long leg, short leg. This is a good shot of that, with the outside leg there being fairly extended, the inside leg being in a very flexed position, but still good ankle flex, right? Both ankles are still flexing. Pressure in the fall line. There's a good shot of that. So skis are in the fall line. He's in the middle of the turn. He hasn't quite finished it yet. And that right ski of his is that World Cup ski is bent pretty well. So that indicates that there's a lot of pressure right in the fall line. Edge angle, high edge angle, higher edge angle than than a lot of our athletes are in right now. That's a pretty nice shot of some good edge angle there. Balance on the outside ski. Really nice shot of that. Still weight on the inside ski, but predominantly on the outside ski, balancing against it. And then turn phases. And this is one of Lemaster's photos that is kind of out of sequence. I'd rather it go in order, but the right order here is to go from the initiation. Back up. Initiation, controlling phase, into transition, into another initiation. Prerequisites for you as a coach before you head out on the snow. These are all things, remember, we haven't even seen the athletes yet, right? We may have had them last year. We're starting to think about what we're going to look at. Things we have to look at in addition to technical or tactical focus is athlete idiosyncrasies, right? Their skill level, their motivation, their injury history, the CAT model, the cognitive, associative, and physical model of, where they are in development as far as physically, emotionally, and mentally. That's going to be an important consideration for what path that we take. The skills concept, which is a PSI US ski team concept. There are basically 3 skills in ski racing: rotary, edging, pressure. You can sort those skills out a little bit. Generally speaking, they're all in part of every turn. Some get emphasized a little bit more in certain turns than others, but the appropriate blending of those skills creates dynamic balance. Turn phases, are we working with, where are we working with turn phases? Is that something that we're going to look at? Ooh, hang on just a sec here. And snow conditions, early season, are we going to do a bunch of, rotary drills in heavy, just blown snow this fall? Probably not. Are you performing MA for a group or individually? So, we talk about MA all the time as if we are, we're out with a private lesson, and that is almost never the case for any of us. We're all out there with 8 to 15 kids. If we're lucky, 8 to 15 kids. We're supposed to put a plan together for the day, for the week, for the season, for the month, based on what we see the kids need. Out of those 15 kids, there's going to be 15 different things that need to be addressed. So you have to decide if you're going to go out and work with maybe 2 or 3 people that have the same skill deficiency, or you've got your whole group and you've got to try to figure out a system or procedure that's going to address everyone's needs. Are you training for development or correction? That's another thing. If you're out there and you're getting ready, that you see something that you think you can fix quickly, and that's training for correction. You're going to try to correct something in the next 2 weeks so that they can use it at an event 2 weeks from now. Or are you training for development? And that's more long-term. Like, what are you trying to accomplish by the end of the year? And what you're going to see in the next 4 weeks, and I think John's done a great job of putting this together, you're going to see, a focus for the U10s that will give a U10 to a U12 coach that has all the things he needs to learn what he needs from the U12 coach. And the U12 coach is going to take that athlete and give them what they need, so that when he gets to the U14 coach, he's got everything he needs there. So ultimately, when we get through all of these progressions, we've got a US ski team candidate that is, that the US ski team coach doesn't have to teach to plan a pole, right? So skipping things can backfire, up the line. And working with some of the U.S. ski team coaches, that's a couple of the things they say. They're like, why do I have to teach an athlete to use their poles at a World Cup? I don't have time to teach that. So they're just going to have to figure that on their own because I have my own hierarchy that I'm working with. So it's really important as a junior coach to make sure that you check all the boxes and work up through all the skills. You'll see in this hierarchy that we've put together, some complex movements will require mastery of simpler movements. So, as an example, if you were trying to teach someone how to do a give and go and a hook shot into a basket, right? You wouldn't teach all those steps at once, right? So you've got to have some dribbling skills, maybe have a pass behind the back for a good give and go, work on your pass behind the back, make sure you're moving to space, practice moving to space, receiving the ball, and then the hook shot. There's all sorts of elements to that to have a good give and go in basketball, right? Same thing applies to skiing. Some of these complex movements that we're asking athletes to perform really need to be broken down into simpler movements. So this is what we're going to see in the next 4 weeks, and John already alluded to it. And the panels have put together, they're working hard on their presentations right now. The coaches committee put together some things that we thought would be obvious. So this is our coaches committee doing MA for the group, all right, instead of for the individual. So, we're doing MA for the group, and our group happens to be all the U10s in New York State. So we really had to titrate that down to what we see would make the biggest impact for the U10s in New York State, and probably in a wider region also. But this is one of the things that was identified by the committee. They'd like to see U10s that could really roll their ankles and skis to an edge to make a turn instead of making a windshield wiper skidded turn. So that's what you're going to see. That group next week will start to address U10s and what they do about what they see on their videos. The U12 focus will be on ankle flexion fore and aft. So even ankles. A lot of U12s in New York State can, some of them can flex their outside ankle, but their inside ankle is kind of lazy. So you get that big ski split going on. And the committee decided that this would be a good thing to focus on in the MA session for U12s. U14s, that's when we need to get pressure on the outside ski and developing long leg, short leg. So that outside ski pressure, this is when they can start to really feel that impulse. If they get good pressure on the fall line, they'll get a good impulse and get a good shot out of that turn and carry that speed and actually ski out of a turn faster than they ski into a turn instead of slowing. U14s is a great time to start playing around with that. And this is just adding to that U14 focus on outside ski pressure. The U16s, that panel that's going to be presenting to you folks is going to talk about a strong top half of the turn and developing fall line pressure to get that impulse and to get that snap out of the turn and get direction change in a small amount of space. So let's set our athlete up for success. So we need to take a look at the athletes and, and this doesn't happen quickly. Hopefully you remember them from last year. If not, you've got to do a little digging. Physiologically, we have to work through all the competencies here. Physiologically, are they strong enough to do the move, right? So whatever you want to do with them, are they strong enough? You will get, in youth development, you will get to a point where you're asking them to do something that they may not be strong enough to perform. And so that can be really frustrating. So you've got to keep an eye on that. Psychological, sociological. Okay, what's going on, Tommy? Did you have a fight with your girlfriend this morning? Because you're really not focused. Okay, are they a loner? Right? Is the group not kind of bringing them into the fold? are they an upstart? And they're always right on your tails every time you do a demonstration, and they are they are the first one to break the line whenever they can. You've got to have maybe a different approach for them than you do for someone that's a little quieter. Equipment selection, fit and tune. So we're right in the thick of that now, right? So we've got a fundamentals camp coming up in Whiteface for U16s in I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks, and 4 or 5 weeks maybe. And I'll guarantee you we are going to have athletes with boots that they've never really worn since the fit session in the shop, and their feet are going to be sore. We're going to have kids on hand-me-down equipment that is too big or too small. We're going to have some binding issues because things weren't checked. Kids are going to bring their rock skis because the cover may be thin and they don't want to bring their good race skis. So we're going to have to deal with untuned skis. All of this is going to affect our progression. All of this is going to have to be addressed so that we can get the most out of those 3 days that we possibly can. Otherwise, we have to change the progression. Their current technical and tactical ability. So we have to kind of match where they are and pace them and lead them to the next step. Okay, so in order to do that, we need to know where our whole group is technically and tactically. Do they have the technical ability to ski the tactic that we're asking them to ski? It was interesting last weekend, if you were at the symposium, the Eastern Coaches Symposium, we had some athletes from Global Racing, and one of the athletes was talking about the other way around. It was very interesting to hear him say that you'll never get the technical if you don't have the tactical. So at his ability and on the world stage, I certainly understand that. Probably a U12, it's probably better to have a good technical background before you ask them to ski the tactics. But they do, that just goes to show you that they do work hand in hand, right? Technical and tactical kind of go together. Is the intensity of training well matched for the required intensity in a race day? So that's something you've got to build into your progression. The progression's got to ask something of the athlete. There has to be an intensity level that the athlete can perform to. An example of that might be, you set up brushes in a picket fence for a jumping drill, or a vertical movement drill, extension flexion drill, and everybody's just cruising through it, and not really getting anything out of it. So you've set it at 2 meters, so maybe it's time to set it at 1.5 meters. Maybe set it down to 1 meter and gets people really moving. But there has to be an intensity factor figured into your progression. So all of this stuff that we just talked about here in this slide, that may take precedent over your technical progression. You may be trying to teach somebody, I don't know, to do a skate to shape to short drill. And if they don't have these competencies at a level that will allow them to have the intensity it takes to perform that drill and make the movements, then you're wasting your time. Then you need to work on some of these competencies instead of working on a technical progression. And this is just a slide that represents that sometimes performing MA for a group requires creativity. So this is actually a slide from somewhere down the Catskills years ago, before safety was invented. Ski racing coaching was a lot more fun before safety was invented. It's an actual slide. All right, so those are all the prerequisites. That's before we go out on the hill. Now we're out on the hill and we have to look at people. So now we're looking at athletes, and for simplicity's sake, let's say we've got that semi-private lesson where we've got 3 athletes that all need the same thing. They're all skiing about the same way. They're all the same age. They get along really well. And so we'll take some of the X factors out of this. So we can divide it up into 2 components to get started so that it doesn't get confusing. First is, what is the ski doing? Okay, so that's the most important thing. Looking at the ski and seeing what the ski is doing. Is it, these are just some examples of 1,000 that can go on out there, right? They're skidding, their tails are washing out. Maybe their skis aren't parallel, they're stepping a little bit, their tips are bouncing, their tails, one tail's up every time it makes a turn. There's all sorts of things. It's important to see what the ski is doing. And then after you see what the ski is doing, then see what the athlete's doing. Gather information, do some data collection. Are they leaning, sitting, rotating, hinging, stepping, all kinds of, all kinds of body movements. Some of them a cause and some of them an effect. So that brings us to looking for clues. So, we've looked at the athlete, we see the skis are doing X, the upper body's doing like 29 different Ys. So we need to sort things out a little bit. So be intentional in your observations and start from the bottom and work up. Ski tracks. What does the ski track look like in the snow if you happen to have good enough snow conditions to be able to see that? Is the ski tracking straight? Is the ski skidding like a windshield wiper? Is snow getting puffed up at the start of the turn, at the apex of the turn, or after the turn's all over? Where's the snow getting pushed? And then you work your way up through the kinetic chain. So then take a look at their feet, see what their feet are doing. See, if they're next to each other, see if they're splayed one in front of the other, see if they're tilting at the same angle, all sorts of things to look at with the feet. And then you work up the kinetic chain, or the knees, or knees, are their skis, 8 inches apart and their knees are touching? Are their skis 8 inches apart and their knees are 12 inches apart? Are they bow-legged? Where do the knees line up in that whole kinetic chain? Hips. Work up from there to the hips, then to the spine. Don't forget the eyes. We'll see a slide here in a minute that shows you how important the eyes are. Don't forget to look at where they are looking. A lot of athletes, especially younger athletes, tend to have their view closer to them than they need to be. And the body needs a second to react, right? I can't remember what the exact number is, but when you see something, you need a second to react to that. And if you're looking closer than 6 meters, then what you see, you will not have time to react to. So the eyes are extremely important. Look at them from different vantage points. So you're going to see different things if you look at them from the front and the back and the side. Each one is going to give you a different view on an athlete. I've seen some coaches, you kind of in PSIA, I don't know if they still have these cards. PSIA used to have some cards that were basically a silhouette of a skier. You could see a little more detail in a silhouette. It was basically a silhouette of a skier performing different types of turns. And what was handy about those cards is you could overlay what you see an athlete doing with that picture of that card to see if they were lined up. So that's just another way you can look at an athlete to see what's going on. Where's their center of mass going? Check for balance there. Is the center of mass, basically balanced over the outside ski? Or is it too far inside, too far back, too far forward? Where's that center of mass going to be? Orientation of the upper lower body. We've talked about that a couple times. The bias of the upper body toward the fall line through the turn. And this is an old phrase from I don't even want to tell you how long ago, because that would indicate that I'm old, but the parallel paradigm of power. And this kind of goes back to looking from the side, the front, and the back. And if you're stuck trying to figure out what an athlete's doing, one of the things to get you out of that mind block when you're trying to figure out what an athlete's doing is remembering everything that's got to be parallel. And throughout a turn, things kind of work like parallelograms, okay? So that parallel paradigm of power was a phrase coined to talk about the skis being parallel and not stepping tips apart or tails apart. Skis remain parallel. As you're looking from down the hill up at the racer or the athlete coming toward you, the shins should remain parallel. Okay, so as the shins move from turn to turn, they should remain parallel. If you're looking at the athlete from the side, another parallel fundamental is the shin and the arch of the back working in unison. So as the shin presses the front of the boot, the back matches that in parallel. And as you let up, the back lets up also. So those two things need to remain parallel. And then finally, the joints being parallel with the slope. So ankles don't have much choice if both skis are on the ground, but then the knees and the hips also need to be somewhat parallel to the slope at the point in the turn that you're looking. So, you know, if it's at the bottom of the turn and you're looking at the slope, you're standing on the side, you're looking at the athlete from the rear as they finish a turn away from you, then their hip joint, or their hips, their knees, their ankles should be pretty much matching that slope. If you're looking at them starting a turn, okay, in transition, again, they should match the slope with some good inclination. Okay, and these are all things that you'll see in the coming weeks. So the other thing that that we see all the time working with coaches is jumping, you know, right to correction. They see one thing, like, and again, I hate to gripe on hands, but you know, the coach sees the hands in the pockets and they're like, oh, there it is, there's what I'm doing. I'm working on hands. Before collecting all of the information, it's really important to collect all the information that you can before you come up with a plan. All of this happens really fast on the hill, you know. So if you're standing next to a training course, you're standing next to a free ski run, you're going to see like 10 or 12 turns. That's it. And then you're not going to see this athlete again for another 10 minutes, 15 minutes. That's a lot to ask of any coach to come up with a plan, right? So the trick here is to ski with the kids, be with them long enough so that you can actually jot down some notes, take a look at things, take a look at everything, and really come up with like an excellent correction program. So I put these two shots up here. I like both these guys are having fun, right? Both these kids are having a blast. And I think U10, U12 wise, I think this is kind of what we get, the guy in the blue or the gal in the blue, not sure which, but that's our athlete, right? That's the athlete that comes to us a lot at U10s and U12s. And what we're trying to do with them is make this athlete in the red down here. So from a movement analysis standpoint, even though this is not a video, it's just a still, but even so, you can see all kinds of things there in this skier in red that you can work on with this skier in blue. Tons of it. And this is where I want you to look at the eyes. Look at the eyes of this young lady in the red. She's got it. She's going where her eyes want to go. And that tongue, man, there's some good body English there. She's gonna make it. That's what we're trying to create right there. And we really can't forget that. So we've done all this. We've done all the prerequisites. You know, we've done some work at home. Maybe we've taken the group that we had last year, and we're going to have a bunch of those kids this year. And we've made some good notes last year. So we have a great place to start from. You know, they're going to grow a lot. You know, they're going to be in new equipment. All that's got to be taken into account. And, you know, we're doing all that. But now we see them ski, and there are some deficiencies. And so we have to address those deficiencies wherever they are. The trick is to pick the one that will make the greatest impact, and just the one, maybe two, but probably just the one. Okay. And it's got to be the one that's going to cause the biggest improvement in movement. And that can be difficult at times. Sometimes you can get lucky and work on a progression or a skill development drill that will erase 2 or 3 of the things that you see wrong. That's awesome. And the more experienced you, and the more time you have coaching, the more likely that is to happen. Whatever you decide, and we're going to get into the particulars in the next 4 weeks, the building of the progression is a very important part of the process. So we have a lot of questions when we do assessments about how to build a progression. And it's really, I think it's the kind of thing where you really shouldn't overthink. Okay. So this is the little graph and the arrow here. You know, it's just simple movements to complex movements. So you start with simple stuff and you move to something more complex. Okay. Maybe you start drawing an arc in the snow with your boot, right? And then you start with a shuffling exercise after that. That's a little more complex. And then you maybe just shuffle twice into the turn. Then you just put your ski into the turn. And then all of a sudden you're skiing on 2 skis. So like a simple movement, now we're skiing, and skiing is a complex movement. Isolating movements and then combining them. Okay, so isolating the, you can isolate the 3 skills, right? You can focus on just edging, but then combine that with some really good pressure control. Okay, so that they don't have to worry about stepping on their ski. They can just worry about putting it up on edge first. And then you can combine it with another skill like pressure to see the ski really snap and really get some feeling out of it. Static to dynamic. Okay. We all do static drills, right? We all have the athletes stand at the top of the course and jump and land and stay there, right? So that's movement into a good athletic position, athletic movement into an athletic position. And then we make it dynamic by sliding on the snow in a variety of different ways. Slow to fast is another progression. You can start skiing really, really slow and then start picking it up as the day goes on. Flat to steep. A lot of the videos that we use for the 100 and 200, that was one of the keys. And some of them, the athlete was just on too steep of a hill. And that would have been, that was kind of extra points in the progressions that got submitted if you said, whoa, 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 this kid's on way too steep of a hill to learn anything right now. So those are all very simple things to keep in mind when you're putting a progression together. Now, if you want to get fancier, then we can talk about constraints. Okay, establishing constraints to encourage new movements. So, and constraints can be a number of things, right? We can take away poles. We can take away a ski. We can have them wrap themselves up so that they can't move their upper body. We can have them put their hands on their heads. We can put brushes in the snow to make them turn a lot shorter than they want to turn. We can put, poles in the snow that they have to jump over to get some good flexion and extension going if they're too static. There's a number of things that we can do to constrain the athlete and set up situations where we don't have to talk about flexion and extension. It just happens. Taking away or adding points of contact, taking the poles away, taking one ski away, that sort of things. Intermittently through all of this progression development, it's always a good idea to ski a variety of terrain. So long ones, short ones, fast ones, slow ones, steep ones, and flat ones, right? So you take that new move, you ski it all over the mountain and get so you own it. That's another really important part of a good progression is skiing it in at the end. So you've done this, you've got some athletes that have improved their technique somehow. And, like I said, we're not getting specific about any particular athlete tonight. This is just a framework, but you're going to see the panels put together some pretty cool progressions, probably pretty simple progressions that work. And then you have to do a little self-evaluation as this is going along. One thing to keep in mind is that improvement in movement doesn't necessarily translate to the clock immediately. Okay, so it's a new movement. It's the right movement. It feels good, but it hasn't been matched with the tactics yet. It hasn't been skied in yet. The timing is easy when there's not a gate in the way, but you put a gate in the way, and now everything goes to crap because now I've got to do it, perform a little different timing. So does not always translate to the clock immediately. So you and the athlete need to be aware of that. Good move is a good move. Keep at it. An improved technique may require a new tactic. We talked about that a little bit. Keep the horse ahead of the cart. Make sure you're not asking them to do something that they don't have the technique to perform. And that comes with a group, right? So you're talking to 15 athletes, and seven of them could really straighten out the line and nail the apex. But 8 of them aren't skiing well enough to do that. So that becomes an athlete management problem, right? At practice day and race day, to try to figure out how to navigate that. Take a look at the ski track. Has it changed? Look at the snow. All right. Have you improved their turn shape? Have you improved their edge angle? What have you improved? Or has it gone the other way? And you need to go back to the drawing board. Make sure when you set a constraint up, it's set up correctly to produce the movement that you want. And if it's not, stop and change it. Okay. So have everybody go for a free run and change it up. We've all done this. We've all gotten to the area early, and your junior coach, maybe partied a little too hard the night before. He's supposed to be there at 7:30 to help you set up. He's not there, so you're carrying up brushes, bundle of gates, drills, extra batteries, everything up to the top of the hill to set up your environments that you're going to work on that day. And you're kind of hurried. There's no one to help you measure. Put it all together, get the athletes up there, and oh my God, it's a terrible set. It's just a terrible set. So stop, change it, and move on. Or stop and go free skiing. You'll be better off. Don't try to keep an environment working that's just doesn't seem to be working. Oh, and the other thing that I meant to mention is what's next. All right, you always have to be a couple steps ahead. What's next for the athlete? That's another thing you've got to be keeping in mind after you do your evaluation. So pitfalls and perils that we see out there on the hill pretty consistently. Number one is attacking the first thing you see. And sometimes you're right on, but sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're right on, but you're missing something else that could really be helpful also. Confusing movement with position. I guess I've kind of beat that horse enough. Staying development phase appropriate. So if you look at the long-term athletic development chart and how often U10s should be doing something and U16 should be doing something, we have to make sure that, there are people a lot smarter than I am that put all that science together, and it really works. So, in our coaching and in developing our progressions, we have to make sure that we're staying within that developmental phase. So if you've got a kid that hasn't developed any abdominal muscles at all, maybe we should be teaching them to, edge their ski a little differently than with a big counter move or something. I don't know. There's a lot of examples that we could talk about, and I'm sure we will over the next 4 weeks. But we have to stay within that developmental framework. Confusing cause and effect. We've talked about that a little bit tonight. Equipment issues. Skis too dull or too sharp. I see a lot of, now with machine tuning out there, I see a lot of juniors on a ski that is just wicked sharp. And you can go find a piece of granite on the side of the hill and just gently hit that edge, and they ski better immediately. Probably can't have the parents catch you doing that. But skis too sharp is a big thing these days. Boots too big or too small. Goes both ways. Good boot fitters are worth their weight in gold. seen a lot of poles too tall. And, we're dealing with developing athletes, maybe hand-me-down poles. The old adage of turning the pole upside down in the shop with your sneakers on, holding under the basket, and you should have a 90-degree elbow is, I guess that's a start. Probably a more accurate start is measuring your athlete's height and getting a pole that's between 30 and 33% of their height, and starting there. A real telltale sign for a coach is if they have to make any kind of extraneous arm movement to plant their pole, then that means their poles are too long. If they've got to flick the basket out away from them to make a pole plant, then their poles are probably too long. As the athletes get to 14s and 16s, they like to have long poles for a big push out of the start. I understand that, as long as it's not interfering with their ski tech. I don't have a problem with that, but if it's interfering with their technical ability to use a pole effectively, then they have to figure out a better way to be faster in the start. So takeaways. I think we're doing okay time-wise. Prepare for your MA session. We did a lot of talk about preparation. We did actually more talking tonight about preparation than we did about the actual MA, and that's appropriate. Train your eye. Things happen fast. So you really have to work on this. You really have to practice doing movement analysis. Train your brain to be patient and observe. Like, just list what you see and don't go try to train your brain not to go. Coaches want to coach. I understand, immediately want to coach, but let's train our brains to take a breath and take it all in before you make any decisions. See strengths as well as weaknesses. MA should not concentrate all the time on weaknesses. I mean, we've got some, maybe you got a kid that's got great angles. Boy, capitalize on that. Compliment them on it. Use that to create other movements. Careful of coaching bias. As coaches get more experienced, I've noticed, and myself included, you start having these biases like, oh, there it is, okay, we got to work on skate to shade to short, they don't have any pressure in the fall line. Well, there may be other things there. You have to be aware of your bias so that you don't always just go to it as the go-to for your coaching. Don't be afraid of being wrong, but just make sure you do something about it. So if your MA is way off base, own up to it. Say, whoa, okay, sorry. We're going to start again, and just go off on a new, on the new approach, whatever it is. Really important. The last two is mentors for MA analysis. You need a mentor at your home mountain. You need a mentor outside your program. We all travel to races. Find somebody that you respect. You respect what they do. You like what they see. You like what their athletes are doing, and that's a great guy to hang out with on race day, or a gal to hang out on race day, right? And ask questions. Wow, what did you see? This next racer, tell me what you see. And you know what? 99 times out of 100, as long as he's not videoing his own racer, that'll provoke some very interesting conversation, and that's where all the learning is really going to happen. So that's it. That's what I had. So hope you enjoyed that. Hope it dusted some shelves off for you, and we'll go back to Mergs or John.
Okay, any questions that you can have, put in the chat. There is a question already on a resource from this program. We are recording it. I'll get this PowerPoint from Aaron and send it to the mothership, and hopefully we'll have a way in our new website of that you'll be able to access some of this resource information. And great presentation, Aaron. Ton of information in there in many respects. One thing I would say, and I think you touched on it, is introducing all this stuff to kids, because we're from MA to some of the progressions he had in there. Terrain is key, okay, for the kids. Picking the right terrain to introduce or evaluate the right skill, especially for the younger kids. And the other thing is, you're not old, Aaron. I saw somebody put a comment in here that says that they still have those cards going out.
Oh, cool.
So,
Cool.
The last thing is one of the most important things I see from this and this takeaway is it's not a position sport. It's a movement. You're constantly adapting. You have to be athletic and you got to have some grit. So, Aaron, thanks so much for your presentation. And John, any closing thoughts from you?
No, Aaron, I thought that was excellent. Folks, remember to self-report yourself. If you have questions how to do that, please reach out to me. I'll send you in the right direction. And next week, next Monday night, same time, the links are out there, and it'll be the U10s. Hopefully, we'll have video up within the next couple of days. When and look at the video, do your own MA on it, and see if you match or have something different than the panel. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. See you next Monday. Aaron, thank you so much.
See you guys. See you on the hill.